are times in this life when we are in desperate need of a good attorney. I have one for you right here. A whole group of them, as a matter of fact, at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Emphasis on law and liberty today. The law prevails, it seems, at least in the short run, hopefully in the long term, and that means liberty prevails ultimately. Will, as you know them, has won a preliminary injunction on behalf of several clients, challenging the Biden administration's racially discriminatory Minority Business Development Agency programming. That is a Biden program if there ever was one. And it also is a cornerstone of the administration's so-called racial equity agenda. Will Associate Counsel Cara Tolliver joins us now to talk about this huge liberty win. Good afternoon, Cara. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Matt. Thanks a lot for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, and again, I said this before, it seems like Will has been racking up a lot of liberty victories over the last little while, and as a Will client, I can tell you I'm very happy with the record that's going on because my news organization is a client of Will. As we've talked about before, we're suing the FBI in the Tennessee case of the Covenant School killer, which is a whole other hill of beans, I suppose, and we're dealing with that right now. But in this particular case, we are talking about, some people call it, I guess, reverse discrimination. Call it by any other name. What you have here at its essence with the Biden administration is discrimination.
That's exactly right, Matt. So, as you said, on Monday, Will was able to secure a favorable ruling ordering President Biden and the Minority Business Development Agency to stop discriminating against our clients based on race. And as you mentioned, this agency is devoted primarily to business-related benefits and programming. It's the newest federal agency, which was officially created back in late 2020 when President Biden signed in the Infrastructure Act into law. But the agency exists solely to provide those benefits on the exclusive basis of race or ethnicity. The court's ruling in our favor here reaffirms the basic constitutional guarantee of equality, which, of course, prohibits the government from picking favorites based on race or ethnicity.
Yeah, and this is interesting to me because we've seen all kinds of this, and Will has been front and center in a number of these particular cases. But what screams to me, Cara, is that we needed another government agency, right? I mean, the creation of this agency in 2020, somebody said, we just don't have enough government agencies. And we certainly don't have enough government agencies that try to, put the thumb on the scale, the government's thumb on the scale when it comes to business opportunity in America. Tell us a little bit about what this agency has been doing in terms of trying to, from its point of view, write history, write what they see as an unfair playing field for people of color and others, as opposed to white Americans or other Americans.
Yeah, so this agency actually existed on a smaller scale previous to its more formal and official passage a couple of years ago, existing only as an administrative initiative of the president. So essentially ebbing and flowing since 1969, according to whatever the given president at the time's prerogative was. However, with the passage of the Infrastructure Act, it is clear that this agency has been officially stamped into law with an explicitly race-based charter and is equipped to greatly expand all of its prior reach through a fully integrated nationwide network of offices. So, in fact, it was given an appreciable $550 million funding allocation to start its operations, and that's otherwise unlimited in duration.
Wow, that's a lot of money going to a program that is discriminatory at its basic core. Cara Tolliver joins us to talk about this particular issue and some others I think that are related to it. She is a Will Associate Counsel. Is this similar? It sounds very similar to me to the USDA case, where you had the United States Department of Agriculture basically playing favorites and offering, I think it was, if I'm correct on this, offering COVID or pandemic era grants for farmers, African American farmers, people of color in agribusiness, and then of course saying, white farmers and others get to the back of the line. Is this similar to that?
That's right, Matt. This program, as you mentioned, it's a cornerstone of the Biden racial equity agenda, and those other programs that you mentioned, the race-based loan forgiveness program. There was another one Will was involved with regarding the allocation of the restaurant revitalization funds. Both of those programs were pursuant to Biden's American Rescue Plan. Both of those were race-based programs, and Will did challenge and secure favorable rulings in those cases as well.
Yeah, and I think an update on those cases as well. The decision by a federal court was these are discriminatory in nature, they are unconstitutional, and they have to stop. What's the status on those particular cases right now?
Those cases, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, that was resolved on appeal in the Sixth Circuit, which essentially said the same thing as the court here in this MBDA case said. In fact, the test that was articulated by the Sixth Circuit in the Restaurant Revitalization Fund case was essentially the same test and sort of a mirrored opinion that this court adopted in our MBDA case. So
that's interesting.
These cases are no-brainers, legally speaking, and pretty straightforward. Race discrimination, not permissible under our Constitution.
That's what I was going to ask you. That leads me to my next question. So you have a preliminary injunction. How confident are you that this ends the same way that you talked about with the restaurant program and the USDA?
Well, at this stage, obviously the court has sided with us to award our requested preliminary relief at this stage. Now the ball is in the government's court, so to speak, to either seek an appeal or consider other actions. So we'll wait and see what happens. Either way, our goal is to ensure that this agency is not allowed to continue in a mission purely devoted to race-based programming and services. So we'll continue to bring that fight in defense of equality.
Will Associate Counsel Cara Tolliver joining us, just a few minutes left, talking about what is a very significant win, yet another significant win for businesses in this case, and for the rule of law, and for the idea that we don't discriminate based on the color of someone's skin. I thought that we had moved beyond that, and that our system of justice is supposed to be focused on that. And you know, Cara, you mentioned that this is a no-brainer sort of thing, and I think we all get that. But then again, the President of the United States, it's not a big leap to say this guy isn't getting it. Let me put it that way generously. This guy isn't getting this no-brainer, situation, and now we keep going to court to get the same result.
Yeah, we do. This case was our 8th lawsuit for our organization that we filed against the Biden administration. I believe we're up to 9 at this point, with 5 wins and still some other cases pending. Race discrimination is an ugly thing, but the sad yet simple truth is that it can also be wielded as a divisive and manipulative weapon against the people to divide and conquer in the name of power and politics. In the current day and age in which the Biden administration is bound and determined to prioritize these racial politics over and in violation of basic constitutional truths and principle, though, this ruling does serve as an important alarm and reminder of what the law is and what the law is not in defense and furtherance of equality.
Yeah, it's at the Biden administration. Now it's being inculcated in our schools, in woke corporate America. But we have just reached this stage now, unfortunately, where, to try to address past problems and past transgressions, now you have a number of folks in society, including the most powerful people in America, who are saying we have to fight racism and discrimination with racism and discrimination. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what seems to be happening in the Biden administration with the Minority Business Development Agency programming.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There really are only limited circumstances in which the government may implement a race-conscious sort of action. To do so, though, the government has to meet strict standards for justification. Absent that adequate justification for each racial preference and the benefits bestowed, the government's race discrimination is unconstitutional and unlawful, and that's exactly what happened in this case. The Biden administration cannot justify, and it largely failed to offer any evidence at all for its arbitrary inclusion of what was like a dozen plus racial minorities for a broad range of business programs and assistance that are just, all over the board, unspecified to any particular business or business industry.
Well, what we just talked about over the last few minutes is exactly why America needs a good attorney. Those who believe yet in the Constitution, the rule of law, and the basic principles of liberty need a good attorney. You've got one at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and Will Associate Counsel Cara Tolliver, another fine addition to the organization. Thanks so much for joining us and bringing some perspective on it.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care.